So the first thing that I'd like for each of you to do is just, in your own words, briefly describe the story of how you got to Upland Hills. How did you find our little school in the woods?
Okay. It was in 1985 that my oldest daughter was starting kindergarten, and I did start her in public school, but I became very sad. There were 33 kids in that class, and then the teacher, that's when kindergarten was half a day, and the teacher also had an afternoon class that had another 33 or 32, something close, and I'm thinking, that's a lot of kids to get to know. So, and there was just so much. I did volunteer to help at the school quite a bit because I was interested in just in other, the kids, even when they were walking to the library, they were like little soldiers walking down the hall, and they couldn't touch each other. And anyway, I heard about Upland Hills through a neighbor who had her son coming here, and she invited me to come. It was in early December, and there was like a workshop, a gift-making workshop for children. And there was also going to be an introduction made by Phil and I think Jean, so that people could learn more about the school, because at that time the school's enrollment was very low and they were needing people. So I was invited to come, and I think a friend came with me, and she stayed in the workshop thing with her daughter and Allison, and they had fun making cute little Christmassy things. And I went to speak, to listen to Phil and Jean. And I came out of there going, I got to make this happen. So I called the school the very next Monday and talked and said, how can I enroll my daughter, and can you start her after the Christmas break? Because I really want her in here. And we made it happen. So she really started in 1986. I also remember and then again, my younger daughter started here 3 years later. And they're the ones who really introduced me to the school. During that time, I was also taking classes. I already had a bachelor's degree, but I went back to school to get my, at the time, Oakland University was offering an elementary teaching certificate and your master's all together. So I was taking a class or two at a time and got my elementary teaching certificate that way. And then by the time I finished, I really wanted to teach here, of course.
All right.
So.
Great, thank you. And the rest is history. Yeah, there we go. All right, thank you. Kathy?
My family moved to Michigan in 2003, and our oldest son had already started in public school when we were living in Oregon, in our farm community where we had a farm. So we had a strong sense of community there, and when we moved to Michigan, the first parent that I talked to ask about schools in the area was an Upland Hills school parent, Kathy Zucker. And the whole time when we were searching for a place to live, to buy, I kept saying to myself, I gotta make sure it's somewhere near that school I heard about, even though we hadn't planned, for a private school. And but our oldest son also had so many different ways he was giving us signals that the many changes and all the newness that was going on in his life was really bothering him. And we began to think that we would be wise to check out Upland Hills School, because then he would have a strong community, just as he had in the farm area. He would have a real strong community around him. So we came. I remember coming the first day, then in, I guess that would have been 2004, with both our sons. And we got to the parking lot, and the oldest son said, "You can't make me go there." And I said, well, we're going to go forward. We told them we were coming, and we started walking towards the building. Of course, he followed. And the youngest son started dancing, and I thought, wow, this child is really responding to this area. And I did too. I felt that energy of just being in nature, just felt the energy of the children, all the joy, that I could see in the children. And then as we came in, and I got to sit with Karen, actually, he, the oldest, was in Jan.
I remember that.
In your room, which took some doing. We sat in there for a while with him. And then somebody said, why doesn't Isaac just go on over here to Holly and Jean's? It was neighboring.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then Karen came and got me, and I got to sit with Karen. And I knew in the discussion that the emphasis here at Upland is on these foundational years. And as an educator, I understood that. And I believed that this really was for us, and my husband agreed, this is where we would create the investment. This is where we would give as much as we could, was both boys would have this for their foundational years. And we didn't have answers for college and all that later, but we knew that that was going to be our best, our greatest gift, was to give that to them. And so both boys started, as it turned out, in 2004 then. Yeah.
And how did you end up becoming a teacher at the school? Because if I remember, I was in your very first group, I remember.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been 2005, 2006, maybe?
It was the 2006 school year, 2006, 2007. And there had been a change in staff here, and Jan had agreed to move up to the next morning meeting group. Mm-hmm. And I was familiar with Jan's curriculum because Elijah had been in your group. And long story short, my husband's position had ended, and I was relocating Peace Camp here, so I had an appointment with Phil already, and came in, and my husband kept encouraging me to ask about the position. But even though I had certified in Alaska and had my degree and bachelor's in education at the University of Alaska, I had not taught full-time in a school. So I met with Phil about the Peace Camp and said, gee, by the way, this position you're advertising as being open. And he said, are you schooled? Do you have a degree? I said, yes. So I had 24 hours. I was up very late that night putting together my resume and my application, and then came in the very next day to be an observer in Jan's group. And I remember when Phil called me to offer me the job, one of the things that he said to me was so meaningful, that he had included the voices of the children in that decision. And Jan was very involved in a full process of how prospective candidates were vetted and interviews, and I sat with you and Phil actually in that interview. But there was that experience of even realizing then that the children's voices and participation in their education was at the heart of what Upland's model is.
How did you understand and how did you enact a love-based education? How do you understand how you did a love-based education? How did you teach that?
Oh boy. Being around here, I taught part-time here for actually before I started as a full-time morning meeting teacher. So I learned a lot by observing other teachers at that time. And I had done, after I finished my degree at Oakland, I did a whole thing of student teaching, And I just knew after doing that, it was like, if I don't get a job at Upland Hills, I don't think I can teach this way. That really required curriculum, and it's like it just felt very cold and harsh, and not something I really thought I could pull off. So anyway, the love-based education. I think a part of it is, number one, the kids called us by our first names. I think you made yourself very approachable. whatever they problems they may have had with another person, I always felt like kids felt very free to come and talk about it. And when there were conflicts between children, and as there always was going to be, we took the time to sit with the two of them and let them talk it out and hear each other's side. And that started even at preschool age, that kids got the chance to really iron out their differences, which I find very love-based, because you get to see the other side of the coin, so to speak. I also loved that, one of the first days that I came to visit the school when Allison was coming here was 2 little girls holding hands skipping down the hall. It's like, this is great, Although it wasn't that hall there. There was a wooden hallway that went between the portable classrooms, and that's where they were skipping. It wasn't that hallway that we see there now. Yeah, because when she started, there was no beautiful building like we have now. So I don't know. I think that's the basis, is that you got to know these kids so well, especially the kids that came from all the way up and through you. They were part of your family.
I saw so much in the first 2 years before I started teaching here. I saw staff that really cared about each other and loved each other. This was unavoidable to notice or to see. I also knew that in our parent-teacher conferences, hour-long conferences, where a conversation with the teachers could really open up into some of the deeper content, not only in our child, but in me and my husband as parents, as necessary. That was evidence of a school that was really caring about the whole person, the whole child. And then as I began to teach here, I also felt that if I could create a curriculum that could really nurture a sense of group. In fact, I was constantly encouraged to do that by the director. Your emphasis ought to be on group and how the group can work together and work things out. I knew and was modeled. I could see the teachers across the hall from me, that they were giving examples and stories that helped us learn how to do that. And was told, if there's a conflict going on, you're not going to get anything through in terms of trying to be teaching whatever the curriculum was, but rather to create the space where the group could work through the conflict, because it was never just 2 people. The whole group was going to feel the wrath of whatever was going on. The other way that I really made an effort to be present with the children, and then to also create an environment that allowed them to really be present with their own self. And we would often talk about multiple intelligences, and that if there were 2 of these intelligences that we wanted to really emphasize, it was the intrapersonal, getting to know one's own self, and then that interpersonal and how the skills of working together. But at the same time, children given a chance to see themselves without tests for measuring IQ, but rather to ask the question, what does it mean to be intelligent with your physical body, with your those types of skills, or with music and math, or with language, or the other ones that are a part of Howard Gardner's system. I thought that did something that allowed the child to love themselves right where they were at.
thinking about parenting and teaching at the same time, my question is, what did teaching here or just teaching in general, help teach you about parenting? And also, what about parenting maybe you brought into understanding how to be a teacher here?
I often will say nowadays, post-retirement, that my 12 years teaching as a morning meeting teacher, I was reschooled as a human being. And then how that translated to my own children was very obvious to me. I benefited by going to those parent-teacher conferences and learning from the teachers that were very invested and rooted in the model, that I could allow my child to grow and develop, and it's okay to make mistakes. We're going to all make mistakes, and we'll learn from those mistakes. They could make their own choices for afternoon program classes for the most part. There were so many ways that I began to translate that home, so that I was really meeting my children more and more and listening to them better instead of overlaying some conscious or unconscious expectations. And that was just almost the cultural conditioned model. So being at the school year after year and seeing that I could really trust this, that the children were just, they are geniuses, as Bucky Fuller said. They're brilliant in their own right. They're thirsty for learning. And power struggles didn't have to be the pathway with a child when I was teaching them, and it didn't have to be my pathway with my children as a parent. But I learned that here, not in my own parents' home, not in the cultural model of our society. I learned it here.
Could you talk a little more about what you mean by power struggles? I think I understand, but I'd like you, if you could explain what you mean by that.
It's like Jan mentioned, the fact that we called each other by first name. It was always clear who the teacher was. The teacher wasn't trying to be a friend to the students, but we were working together. It's more of a circular model, that we're all together in this. And, for instance, if I was approaching my students with an expectation that they needed to get a certain grade, that I was going to measure their learning by a grade, we were going to be a power struggle about whether they had homework done. In fact, that was another fallacy that really fell away. That homework was somehow going to stuff enough information in that it was going to come out on a test. Just that, as the tools that are used in most schools right now, I would say creates power struggle, measurement, judgment, expectations that are unrealistic. But when a child is motivated from within, and we start seeing and noticing where their strengths are and where their motivations are, and they can build from there. This isn't a hierarchical trying to make something happen, and that kind of power struggle, which is very commonplace as a parent and a child, that relationship. But at the school, I could go into the staff meetings, I could find out so many ways that the student of mine was really thriving in a certain kind of environment, and then I could nurture that. And there were just so many different ways, nuances of working with all school meetings, working together on challenges instead of making rules and putting up fences all around things. Let's work together. And then those power struggles that are natural could start moving towards collaboration, ideas, new thinking, and much more.
Jan?
Well, this got me thinking about the way I grew up. My father owned a business, and my mother basically organized his ideas and business. but everything was very, hurry up, let's get going, and I think teaching here and being with my children here taught me to just take in the moment, be in the now. I can remember one day here at school, and it was probably in my, I don't know, we were in the building. Actually, I never taught in the other rooms. I was always in the building, but there was this lovely snow that started early in the morning, and by the time kids got here, we had 2 or 3 inches of this lovely, wonderful packing snow, and it just kept coming, and the whole school was outside in that snow because it was there, and it was this special snow. We had snowmen covering the whole field out there, and I think David and I worked, and we built this snowman that we carved, and then you could get in there and put your face in the snowman. And there were just so many lovely things about the whole thing, from the preschool up to the oldest kids, and sledding and building, and I probably went on till lunchtime because it was so fun. But it was just being in the now. This is what we've been given this day, and we should just experience it to the fullest. And I think teaching here brought that home with my girls and myself, and we just say, well, it's spring break, where do we want to go, what do we want to do, we've got time off, I've got time off work, you've got time off school. And it was like, I want to go to Toronto. So we figured out how to get on the train in Windsor, and we went. Things like that were just fun.
What was it like having children of your own at the school while you were teaching?
Well, I would say that it was probably harder on my kids than on me. I can remember being like, can we please go home now? Sometimes they might have to stay while we were doing a staff meeting, or they had to be out here while I was working. Other than that, it never seemed to have a big problem. I have a funny story. When my youngest daughter came into my group, and there was a new boy who had joined the school that year. It was about the end of October, and I had given some instruction, and Emily, that's my daughter, yelled out, "Mom, do we have to do that?" And this young man said, "Jan is your mom?" And it was just so funny that he hadn't realized that I was her mother and her teacher. He couldn't conceive of that, but it was just funny that it happened. So a couple of times they were maybe embarrassed that I, kind of scolded one of their friends, or, my one daughter, one day I walked in the girls' bathroom because I heard some funny giggling in there, and she was sitting on top of the stalls, she and a couple other girls, and I'm just like, you guys, those things are hooked to the ceiling because they couldn't be screwed in the floor, and you're going to collapse, number one, or you're going to break them. And she was really embarrassed that I made them clean the bathroom that day. I said, "This is your punishment."
Kathy?
Oh, I'd agree with Jan. I think that there were times that the boys were ready to go home, and they needed to come early.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. They came early with me. For me, it was a precious gift to be with them in that way, meaning we were driving to school together. We were driving home together. I was aware of their day at school, whether it was special snow. I noticed that it was a rare thing that they would ever come to one of my afternoon classes. And I sort of make peace with that, right? But otherwise, yeah, it just was a gift. And
See, you had to do one that was required of them.
Yeah. And I think that they had such a strong sense of community, which is what we came here for. As I mentioned, that after school, as it is today, there's still somebody out there, throwing a ball in the basket. I mean, so they were playing with their friends, and it was just extra time with friends. So
Yeah.
in that respect, it was a bonus.
Yeah.
Is there anything, either of you, that you'd like to share or talk about? The audience of this show is the parents of the school. So what you think might be important to share, or something that I wouldn't have thought of, anything at all?
Well, I do have something I would love to share because I've been asked so often, even recently. Where did your kids go to school when they left Upland? Both of the boys went to public schools. Elijah went to Clarkston High School and Isaac over to Oxford High School. There was never a doubt in my mind they would be here all the way through. I had no concerns really about their entry into the high school. If anything, I had concerns about children that were going off to middle school, because I could see full on here at Upland, it's that age where it just seems like kids can just fall apart. You think they've made so much progress and it's like they're regressing, but they would always graduate here at Upland like all really put back together and ready. The boys would want to be in a bigger school. Both of them wanted that. They wanted more options and choices for electives. They wanted more girls around. There were just things they wanted. And my boys are very different. The oldest was never motivated by grades, never. Motivated by community. So finding a school where he was in the robotics club and he had a strong sense of team and community, that's what motivated him through high school. And he's got his college degree now and all good things. The other one, we could have put him anywhere because he just always seemed to want to excel. And so he graduated as one of the valedictorians. But today, I think that I notice parents have this concern about this transition, and I want to return to this idea of the foundational years. Those foundational years, we don't get them back. And when they have had them with strong community, which is what we were pulling the little bit of savings that we had for college, and we were putting in and borrowing money so they could have that, then they're put together. And that when they encountered things in high school, which they did, that were going to bother me. If anything, I'm the one that had the problem with child number one, because we were going into a system that is really about micromanaging. And here's the parent portal. And I'm seeing way too much information, and ended up in the power struggles with my son. And he said, "Mom, what are you doing?" Like he hadn't experienced that while I was here. And I said, "You're right." So by the time I got to son number two going through high school, I said, "Look, this education, you know how to do it. You know how to calculate where you're at and all this. This is really on you. You ask for support, you got it." But I had to do a complete turnaround in myself with son number one in the high school setting because of the culture in the public school and most schools. So I know that we definitely got what we were really hoping for with both boys. And the oldest was only here 4 years, but he went through all those inner challenges and those early preteen years. He got into trouble. He had this community wrapped around him to help him know himself better. I know to this day that is, they just know themselves. And the high school teachers would say, "I want your son to stay with me. He comes up, he talks, he asks questions." They knew themselves to be able to navigate with whatever was going to get dished out at high school. So thank you, Upland Hills School, and Jan as one of the teachers for both my boys, and all of the teachers that are here today for these kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Jan, could you talk about your experience post Upland Hills as a parent?
Yeah, both of my daughters, had the opposite. They wanted to find more boys, but no, they were ready when it was time to leave here to be in a bigger expanse. One was more interested in sports, and the other was more interested. I want to keep going in music and theater, and it was being offered. They went to Lake Orion High School, both of them. They both did very well, and the compliments from the 10-minute parent-teacher conferences that I had with every teacher was, your child is so open to just talking to me so easily, not intimidated, And they're not rude, but they're polite, but they're just so open. So I think that they learned that here, that confidence, and they learned that. I think they learned here loving to learn, that they never lost the love of learning because they were here. They didn't have the doldrums of this, kind of rote and practice, take a test, rote and practice, take a test that other kids had experienced. So the other thing I want to say that I learned from the school is for parents who are here and they're worried, and trust your children. Mm-hmm. I think Upland Hills gave the opportunity, particularly with our afternoon program, that the kids got to check out so many different little things, whether it was gathering maple sap and being outside, or working on something on a computer, making a great, what would you call those at the time?
I did radio lab class.
Yeah, radio lab. I never, but other people came in and taught my children in the classroom how to play around with these computers and make PowerPoint presentations. Yes. That's what I was looking for. But I just think you've got to trust that your children, let them feel all of these things out. And if you are a parent here, don't try to choose their afternoon classes for them. Let them do it, and they'll drift where they need to be. Mm-hmm. It's just so obvious that they might be going to the same teachers a lot because that teacher is feeding something in them that they need. And trust that they'll do well. Yeah, is the transition tough? It can be a little tough, sure. Now you got a locker, and you got to know the combination.
Yeah, that was a big funny from high school. He waited a whole semester before he finally revealed he couldn't open the lock.
But all of those things, and finding friends. Both of my daughters found friendships right away, and got involved in extracurricular activities. So I think it's all out there. But again, what you pointed to, the foundation they got here, was so priceless.
What is your single message to all Upland Hills parents? If you could tell them anything, what would you want them to know?
Trust them. Let them be free enough, and trust that they will find the path they need. Both of my girls have gotten through high school. They've gone through college. My oldest one was very much a student, and she's gone on to college and on to college. But she loves her job. My younger daughter loves her job, even though it's a very different kind of job. One is in a science medical field, and the other is a designer, So they're very different, but they're both doing what they love. And I believe all of that stems from this school and this beginning for them both to find the passion. But trust your kids. And I guess I would say, if your kid is telling you at 7th grade, I really want to go, then trust them and let them go. But if they want to stay, please let them stay. That last year here, that 8th grade year, can be
gold.
So phenomenal for them. Just come to a graduation and you'll see what we mean.
Mm-hmm. So I have an odd, it may seem odd, but we had Shafali Sabari come to the school twice. She's the author of Conscious Parenting and more, and she is working throughout the world to foster new understandings about parenting, to shift out of the Kool-Aid version that we're always supposed to make our kids happy. And she said these words: fear is seductive. So coming to Upland Hills School as a parent was coming to school. So we are in school too to become more conscious as parents, more present, and to really remember that fear can come up over anything, but is that really what we want to lead and motivate our actions and decisions with our children? So it's an odd one to remember, but fear is seductive. I have not forgotten that message.
Yeah. And so many fear they're going to get to high school and not do well. Well, they may have some bumps in the road. You know, it's totally different taking tests all the time and all of that, but they'll learn how to do it.
They're so capable.
Yeah.
They're so capable. And if anything, some of our students we know are in their schools and they're starting to change their schools. You know, asking for windows to be opened. And it just is very subtle. Let us go outside. These are children that are going to be changing, you know, facets of life in our society. Yeah.
All right. Thank you both so much. I have a deep, deep love for both of you. Great appreciation. And thank you.
Love you, Michael.
Like you.